The sun was beating down on the concrete, creating that distinctive shimmer of heat you only see on the hottest days of summer. The kind of day where your flip-flops stick slightly to your feet, and the thought of cool water becomes an obsession rather than just a passing desire. That's exactly how it felt for our group. Me, Alex, Jamie, and Casey, as we trudged along the sidewalk toward Pinecrest Community Pool, towels slung over our shoulders and sunscreen already making our skin glisten. We'd been planning this day for weeks, the perfect remedy to the suffocating heat that had settled over our town like a heavy blanket. The pool was our oasis, our escape from the mundane summer routine of video games and Netflix marathons that had started to feel more like a prison than a vacation. As we approached the familiar blue gates of Pinecrest, something felt off. The usual cacophony of splashing and laughter was noticeably absent, replaced by an eerie silence that made the hairs on my arms stand up despite the heat. Maybe everyone's at lunch, Alex suggested, though we all knew that was wishful thinking. It was peak pool hours, 2 p.m. on a Saturday in July, and Pinecrest was never quiet at this time. Our suspicions were confirmed when we rounded the corner and saw Mark, the head lifeguard, standing at the entrance with his arms crossed. Mark wasn't your stereotypical lifeguard. He was in his mid-30s with a receding hairline that he tried to compensate for with an overly serious demeanor. "Pool's closed," he announced before we could even reach the gate, his voice carrying across the empty parking lot with surprising authority. What? Jamie asked, already pulling out her pool membership card as if to prove we had every right to be there. Mark sighed, clearly having delivered this news multiple times already today. Health department found bacteria levels are too high. Something wrong with the filtration system. They're working on it now, but it'll be closed for at least 48 hours. The disappointment hit us like a physical force. Casey actually groaned out loud, while Alex kicked at the ground in frustration. The heat seemed to intensify around us, as if mocking our thwarted plans. We watched as Mark turned away a family with small children, their colorful floaties and water toys now useless accessories. "This is the third weekend in a row something's ruined our plans," Jamie muttered as we retreated to a nearby bench in the shade. First it was the rain canceling the outdoor movie, then Alex's mystery stomach bug during the concert, and now this. Let me explain why this particular disappointment hit us so hard. This wasn't just any summer for us. It was the last summer before we all headed off to different colleges. Alex was going to Boston, Jamie to California, Casey to Chicago, and I was staying local. The unspoken reality that hung between us was that our friendship would never be quite the same after August. Distance changes things, no matter how much you promise it won't. So each canceled plan felt like more than just a missed opportunity for fun. It was time slipping away from us, time we couldn't get back. As we sat there, sweating and sulking, I noticed Casey's expression change. There was a familiar glint in her eye that usually preceded her most brilliant or most disastrous ideas. "What if," she said slowly, lowering her voice even though no one was around, "the pool isn't really closed for us?" Alex raised an eyebrow. "What are you talking about?" "You heard Mark. Health department orders." Casey leaned in, and we instinctively formed a tighter circle. "I mean, what if we came back tonight? After hours?" The suggestion hung in the air between us. Breaking into the pool after dark. It was simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. Jamie was the first to respond, her practical nature immediately identifying the problems. "That's trespassing. We could get arrested. Or worse, it could go on our records right before college." She was right, of course. The logical part of my brain was sending up red flags and warning signals. But there was another part, the part that felt the weight of our dwindling time together. That was already imagining how the pool would look under the stars, how the water would feel in the cool night air. "The gate by the equipment shed," Alex said quietly. "The lock's been broken for months. The staff just prop a chair against it during the day." We all looked at Alex in surprise. "How do you know that?" I asked. "My cousin works maintenance here on weekends," he shrugged. "Mentioned it a while back when I was helping him move some furniture." Suddenly, what had seemed like an impossible fantasy was transforming into a feasible plan right before our eyes. Casey was already checking the weather forecast on her phone. "Clear skies tonight. New moon, so it'll be dark." "This is crazy," Jamie said, but I could hear the shift in her voice. The practical objections were giving way to possibility. "What about security cameras? They don't have any that actually record, Casey replied. Just those dummy ones by the front entrance to scare off kids. My mom's on the community board. They've been trying to get funding for real ones for years. As we walked back to my house, the plan took shape. We would meet at the corner of Elm and Pine at 11 p.m., dressed in dark clothes. We'd bring minimal supplies, towels, a waterproof flashlight, and our phones in Ziploc bags. No food that could leave evidence. No alcohol that could impair our judgment. We'd enter through the equipment gate, swim for an hour or two, and leave everything exactly as we found it. The rest of the day passed in a blur of nervous excitement. I found myself checking the clock every 20 minutes, alternating between anticipation and anxiety. What if we got caught? What if the bacteria in the pool was actually dangerous? What if this whole idea was monumentally stupid? But as I packed my backpack that evening, carefully rolling my towel and double-checking that my phone was fully charged, I realized that the potential consequences seemed less important than the story we would create together. In a few months, we'd be scattered across the country, building new lives with new friends. But tonight, we would have one more adventure to bind us together. At precisely 10:55 p.m., I slipped out my bedroom window and made my way through the quiet streets of our neighborhood. The night was indeed dark, with only the glow of streetlights to guide my way. When I reached our meeting spot, the others were already there, dark shadows against the night. "Everyone ready?" Casey whispered, her voice tight with excitement. We nodded, too nervous for much conversation now that the plan was actually in motion. The walk to Pinecrest was tense, each of us scanning for cars or late-night dog walkers who might question why 4 teenagers were out so late. But the streets were deserted, as if the town itself was conspiring to help our mission succeed. The pool complex looked different at night. The cheerful blue and white paint seemed ominous in the darkness, and the closed sign on the front gate took on an almost threatening quality. We skirted around the main entrance, making our way to the back where the equipment shed stood. Just as Alex had said, the gate there was secured with nothing more than a plastic chair propped under the handle. Casey moved it carefully, and the gate swung open with a slight creak that sounded deafening in the quiet night. We froze, waiting for alarms or shouts, but nothing happened. After a moment, we slipped through one by one. The pool deck was bathed in faint silver light from the stars, the water a dark, inviting rectangle before us. Without the usual crowd of families and the blaring pop music from the speakers, there was something almost magical about the space. It felt like we'd stepped into another dimension where this place existed just for us. "I can't believe we're doing this," Jamie whispered, but she was already kicking off her shoes. There was a moment of hesitation as we stood at the edge of the water. The bacteria warning flashed through my mind again. "Do you think it's actually unsafe?" I asked. Alex dipped his hand in, swirling it around. "The water feels normal. And honestly, I bet the bacteria levels thing is just what they tell people. It's probably just a broken pump or something." That was enough reassurance for Casey, who suddenly stripped down to her swimsuit and cannonballed into the deep end. The splash seemed impossibly loud, and we all cringed, expecting sirens and searchlights at any moment. But again, nothing happened except the gentle lapping of disturbed water against the pool's edge. One by one, we joined her. The water was perfect, cool enough to be refreshing, but warm enough to be comfortable. Without the harsh sun beating down, swimming felt different, more peaceful somehow. We floated on our backs, looking up at the vast expanse of stars above us. "I can't remember the last time I actually looked at the stars," Jamie said softly. "Like, really looked at them." "That's because there's always something else demanding our attention," Alex replied. "Screens, homework, people, whatever." Casey flipped over and began a lazy backstroke. "You know what I'm going to miss most about you guys? This. Not the big moments or the planned events. Just existing together. Knowing you're there." The simple honesty of her words created a lump in my throat. We'd been friends for so long that we rarely stated the obvious, that our friendship mattered, that we mattered to each other. Maybe it took breaking the rules, finding ourselves in this surreal midnight moment, to be able to say these things out loud. We swam and talked for what felt like hours, but was probably only 45 minutes. We reminisced about our first meeting in 6th grade science class, the disastrous camping trip freshman year, the time Alex got us all detention for his ill-conceived senior prank. We talked about our fears about college and growing apart. In the darkness and the water, it was easier to be vulnerable, to admit the things we might not say in the harsh light of day. I was in the middle of telling a story about our middle school principal when Jamie suddenly went rigid beside me. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. We all went still, straining our ears. And then we heard it, the unmistakable sound of keys jangling, followed by footsteps on concrete. Someone was coming. Panic seized us. We looked around frantically for an escape route, but the only way out was past whoever was approaching. We could hide in the water, but our backpacks and towels were clearly visible on the deck. There was no way to disappear. "Quick, get out and grab your stuff," Alex hissed. "Maybe we can make it to the back gate." But it was too late. A beam of light cut through the darkness, and then Mark the lifeguard's voice rang out. "Who's there? This is private property." We froze, caught like deer in headlights, or more accurately, like teenagers in a flashlight beam. For a moment, no one moved or spoke. Then Casey, always the bravest of us, stood up in the shallow end. "It's just us, Mark," she called out, her voice surprisingly steady. The flashlight lowered slightly, illuminating our guilty faces. Mark stood at the edge of the pool, keys in one hand, flashlight in the other, and an expression of utter disbelief on his face. "Are you kidding me?" he said finally. "The pool is closed. There are signs everywhere. This is trespassing." We climbed out of the pool, dripping and shivering now that the cool night air hit our wet skin. None of us could meet his eyes. "We know," I said. "We're sorry. We really needed this today." Mark ran a hand over his face. "Do you have any idea how much trouble you could be in? How much trouble I could be in for finding you here and not reporting it?" That last part caught my attention. Was he suggesting he might not report us? I dared to look up and found him watching us with an expression that wasn't entirely anger. There was something else there, understanding, maybe, or at least conflict. "Look," Jamie said, always our diplomat. "We know it was wrong. But this is our last summer together before college, and everything keeps getting canceled or ruined. When the pool closed today, it just felt like one disappointment too many." Mark sighed deeply. "So you decided breaking and entering was the solution?" "The gate was already broken," Alex pointed out, then immediately looked like he regretted speaking when Mark's glare turned to him. But something unexpected happened then. Mark's stern expression cracked slightly, and he let out a short laugh. "The equipment gate. Yeah, I've been telling management to fix that for months." He shook his head. "You know, I was your age once too. Had my own group of friends I thought would last forever." There was something in his voice, a hint of nostalgia or perhaps regret, that made me realize Mark wasn't just the authority figure we'd always seen him as. He had his own story, his own past. "Did they?" Casey asked. "Last forever, I mean." Mark set his flashlight down on a deck chair, its beam creating long shadows across the pool. "Some did. Others. Life happens. People move, priorities change. My best friend from high school lives in Australia now. We talk maybe once a year." He paused. "But I still remember the night we broke into our high school pool. Summer of '04. We exchanged glances, hardly believing what we were hearing. Mark, rule-following, serious Mark, had been a teenage rebel too? "So, you're not going to call the police?" Alex ventured. Mark looked at us for a long moment. "I should. That would be the responsible thing to do." He glanced around the empty pool area, then back at us. "But instead, I'm going to tell you that the filtration system is fixed. The bacteria levels were back to normal this afternoon, but we're required to wait for official clearance before reopening." We stared at him, not quite understanding what he was saying. "The water is safe," he clarified. "And I'm here because I forgot my phone after the maintenance crew left. I'll be doing paperwork in the office for about an hour. After that, I'll be locking up and doing a thorough check of the entire facility." He emphasized the last part meaningfully. It took a moment for his words to sink in. He was giving us an hour. 1 hour to enjoy the pool, with his knowledge but without his official sanction. "Why?" Jamie asked, voicing the question we were all thinking. Mark picked up his flashlight. "Because sometimes rules exist for good reasons, and sometimes they're just obstacles to moments that matter. The trick is knowing the difference." He started walking toward the office building. 1 hour. Leave everything exactly as you found it. And if anyone ever asks, this conversation never happened. We stood in stunned silence as he disappeared into the small office building at the edge of the pool area. Then Casey let out a quiet whoop and dove back into the water. That hour was perhaps the most magical of the entire summer. We swam with a new appreciation for the opportunity we'd been given, for the unexpected alliance with Mark, and for the precious time we had together. We talked more about our hopes for college and our fears about the future. We made promises to stay in touch that, for once, didn't feel hollow or obligatory. When our time was almost up, we carefully gathered our things, making sure to leave no trace of our presence. As we prepared to leave, Mark emerged from the office. "All clear?" he asked, his official lifeguard persona back in place. "All clear," we confirmed. "And thank you." He nodded once. "The pool reopens tomorrow at 10 a.m. I expect to see you all here, through the front entrance, with your membership cards." We agreed eagerly, already planning to return. As we slipped back through the equipment gate, carefully replacing the chair exactly as we'd found it, I realized that this night had given us more than just a swim or an adventure. It had given us a new perspective on rules and boundaries, on the importance of seizing moments while respecting their value, and on seeing people, even authority figures, as complex individuals with their own stories. Walking home under the stars, still damp and slightly chilled but filled with a warm glow of friendship and shared experience, I understood something important about growing up. It wasn't about following every rule perfectly or rebelling against them all. It was about finding that balance, knowing when to push boundaries and when to respect them, recognizing the difference between breaking rules for selfish reasons and bending them for meaningful ones. The next day, we returned to Pinecrest Pool as promised, officially this time. Mark gave us a nod of recognition, but otherwise treated us like any other pool-goers. The experience felt different in daylight, more ordinary, less magical, but we carried the secret of our midnight swim with us like a shared treasure. As the summer continued and our inevitable separation drew closer, that night at the pool became a touchstone for us. Whenever we faced disappointments or obstacles, we remembered how sometimes the most meaningful experiences come from unexpected places. We learned to be more resourceful, more appreciative of the time we had together, and more understanding of perspectives different from our own. Years later, when we're back in town for holidays or reunions, we still visit Pinecrest Pool. Mark is long gone, moved on to other jobs or other towns, but the lessons from that night remain. Sometimes, when the timing is right and we're all together again, we'll exchange knowing glances and someone will say, "Remember when the lifeguard closed the pool, but not for us?" And in that moment, despite all the changes and distances between us, we're right back there. For friends on the edge of adulthood, breaking the rules just enough to create a memory that would bind us together long after that final summer had ended. Total _count, 13,682.